Hi, everyone. My name is Brett Wilson. I'm Senior Director of Thought Leadership and Strategy with Cornerstone. Much of what we do on the thought leadership team at Cornerstone is to research things like modern trends in learning and in talent. Our customers rely on us to bring them these trends and what's really happening on the landscape, as does our company, to remain competitive. We've done a lot of research as it applies to technology, its advancement, and our ability to keep pace in terms of training our workforce. One of the principal conclusions we've reached is that the world has changed, that in the next industrial revolution has arrived. This according to the World Economic Forum. We've now entered the fourth industrial revolution. And that's where technology has been embedded into every facet of society in ways that involve and frankly require entirely new capabilities for people and machines. A little history. The first industrial revolution is widely taken to be that shift from our reliance on animals and human effort as primary sources of energy to the use of fossil fuels and the mechanical power this enabled. The second industrial revolution occurred between the end of the 19th century and the first 2 decades of the 20th century. And it brought major breakthroughs in terms of, the formation of electricity distribution, both wireless and wired, the synthesis of ammonia, and new forms of power generation. The third industrial revolution began in the 50s and the one that we're most familiar with, and that came the development of digital systems and communications. The 1950s saw rapid advances in computer power, which enabled us to have new ways to generate, process, and share information. So, from our point of view, this means we have to recognize that we need to reinvent how we manage talent and develop new skills. But what's happening is that rapid change gives rise to business model disruption. Learning and development doesn't control that. But learning and development has to move at that speed, which disrupts our traditional view of skilling up people within job families or occupational roles. And I think we have to look at it differently now as well. Deeper expertise, in my opinion, is going to be the requirement. And the ability for people to autonomously self-curate content at the speed of work and in the flow of work. And the ability for organizations to enable that is, in our judgment, the next important move for organizations to make. And here's why we think that way. We see just about every industry as being disrupted, which means almost every job is changing. And that's what's causing the global skills crisis. That same PwC research that I showed you a moment ago tells us that concerns about the availability of skills are at an 8-year high and top of the list of 81% of CEO talent agendas. And we all see this. For example, look at how we consume media. We went from, for those of you who remember, getting in the car and going to Blockbuster Video to rent a video. Then we moved on to Redbox at the convenience store. And now we're on to Netflix and streaming media. There are also disruptions in how we commute. Going from taxis to Uber, and we all read about how it's not going to be too long before we have driverless cars. Disruption is coming in manufacturing in the form of 3D printing. I mean, that to me is amazing. Not sure where, we're to the point where a human heart was actually developed using a 3D printer, using human tissue. It does everything but beat. The 3D printing is going to be a major disruption in manufacturing that we'll have to learn new skills. The change is dramatic, and automation is the #1 disruptive force. But disruptions it's not new. What makes this time unique, it's the speed and the complexity and the global span that makes today's talent dilemma very hard. So not surprisingly, jobs have already changed, and the skills are new and they're unique, and in many cases in very, very short supply. And according to the latest research, soon we'll only be as good as the skills we possess. But which skills are they? How can we make sure we keep pace? You might ask, looking at this slide, Are the jobs I'm showing you, are these the jobs of tomorrow? No, they're not. They actually exist today. You know, this up in the upper left, culinary product developers. Amazon actually has these people to grow their grocery home delivery ambitions. For Tesla and Uber, they're using this job title of automotive occupant packing engineer. And they create and conduct ergonomic studies for things like ingress, egress, comfort, occupant rider experience, stuff like that. Smartphone companies, if you look to the bottom right, they're now leveraging a position titled camera algorithm engineers, because that's a key differentiator on their platform. So the world of work is changing, and some jobs are frankly changing faster than others. When you get an opportunity, since we're all closed in the house, there's a great TED Talk by Sir Ken Robinson. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend watching it. This is where Robinson maintains that our approach to education is still trapped in the late 18th century thinking, where we send our kids to school so that one day they'll replace the older workforce in the factories. And it was and still is the focus of the 3 R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic. But, pardon me, but today, there is an increasing awareness that there needs to be a more demand-driven approach to educational attainment. Or put more simply, there needs to be a focus on developing skills that are needed by employers in the workplace. While this is a straightforward concept, it's not how our education system or employer organizations are currently designed. And that's not necessarily anybody's fault. It's just how things have evolved. Short, this means that in this new digital age, skills have become the new currency, and data is the oil that fuels our transactions. Now, what we're seeing is a global skills crisis. According to PwC's 18th annual survey of chief executive officers, CEOs see change coming, and they're seeking a much broader range of skills. Great products and solutions come when there's a synthesis of lots of different kinds of perspective and thought. But they're also worried what their people may not be ready. The survey also points out that skills are at the top of CEOs' talent agenda. 81% of them say their organizations are looking for a much broader range of skills than in the past. And this isn't surprising, since CEOs are looking to grow their headcount, and they recognize that finding talent with new key skills is going to be tricky, especially when a third of millennials lack work-related computer skills. And it's not just the CEOs. In a recent Wall Street Journal survey, when asked what is the top concern of chief financial officers today, the number one concern is hiring and retaining qualified employees. And as they put it, the Wall Street Journal, we've been doing surveys 21 years, 85 quarters now. That's the first time that it's been the number one concern of CFOs. Now, this also takes on a new dimension when we consider how compressed our schedules are. You know, nobody seems to have time to do training anymore. This chart, as I'm sure many of you recognize this from Versa, illustrates how corporate training has evolved, kind of into a continuous learning model. And we're now, using his phrase, we're now learning in the flow of work. At this point, I have to take a pause, and I'd be remiss not to mention the reality we're all right in the middle of. And it's a tragedy, and it's taking a huge toll on life in our economy. But I bring it up because there is a learning moment here. I would normally be on stage talking to you right now, but instead, I'm coming to you via a virtual recording. Now, I pause at this point in my presentation because I'll be venturing into the differentiation of skills, the real point of my presentation today, and how best to teach them. The fact that I'm doing this virtually as opposed to a live session actually provides a stage for this learning moment. You'll see what I'm talking about here in a minute. But, you know, trust me, I'm not trying to plug here. I'm frankly very proud that my company, Cornerstone, is able to provide some relief under the circumstances of COVID-19. And I think we all want to contribute in whatever ways we can. being a learning and talent company, this is how we're doing it. We're trying to help. So it's not a sales pitch. It's just really a way that we can help. Go check it out at cornerstonecares.com. Okay. Now back to our regularly scheduled program. Hard skills are the technical expertise and knowledge needed for a job. Soft skills are interpersonal qualities, also known as people skills, and personal attributes that one possesses. The business executives consider soft skills a very important attribute in job applicants. They want new employees to have strong soft skills as well as hard skills. And where I'm referencing this list is from a study that identified the top 10 soft skills as perceived the most important by business executives. And you can read them. Integrity, communication, courtesy, flexibility, teamwork, work ethic, etc. What's interesting is this was 8 years ago. Now flash forward today, and not to the exclusion of the skills I just showed you. But these are additive and arguably the most important for navigating today's fast-paced world. Things like adaptability, the ability to negotiate, a willingness, an altruistic willingness to help others, collaboration, people management, critical thinking, time management. These are critical soft skills unique to the environment we're in today. And there's a challenge with teaching these. Specifically, and in layman's terms, again, we look at two types of skills principally. They're hard skills and they're soft skills. And to put it in layman's terms, hard skills are things you do with things, and soft skills are things you do with people. So anytime you think of an activity that you attach to a thing, that's what we call a hard skill. For example, let's say you're creating a website. You're having to interact with code or tools you use to create web pages. Or another example, let's say you're fixing a car, maybe performing a tune-up. These are examples of hard skills. Soft skills, on the other hand, are things like communication skills or negotiating, or in my case, the ability to go toe-to-toe arguing with my wife. I always lose, so that's a skill I certainly need to work on. But these are examples of soft skills, things you do with people. Now, it's here that I want to introduce a couple of terms to you: declarative and procedural learning. So if you accept the notion that hard skills are things you do with things, and soft skills are things you do with people, by the way, this is steeped in research. If you're doing hard skills, you utilize declarative learning. And soft skills are things you do with people and are best taught using procedural learning. Let me explain. As a learning and development professional, I get asked lots of questions all the time, be it from colleagues, coworkers, or customers. And it's more in the form of the following. How do I teach Java, or how do I make entries on my time card? But really what's more prevalent is, how do I learn leadership skills, or how to make a decent presentation? Now, what's funny is they never get asked the stuff on the left. This is the stuff YouTube exists for. But, that's the hard skill stuff. But I'm always being asked about soft skills all the time. I've been having discussions with customers around skills and competencies for years. But, lately I never get questions about how to learn things we do with things. It's always about interpersonal skills or soft skills. So what's the distinction? Let's take a closer look. When I think about the distinctions between the two learning types, declarative and procedural, I think declarative learning as cognitive knowledge, facts, figures, that it involves knowing that something is the case. For example, knowing that the letter J is the 10th letter of the alphabet is an example of knowledge coming to me through declarative learning, or that Paris is the capital of France. These are facts, and this is how we do declarative learning. However, procedural learning is really defined as implicit learning. And unlike declarative learning, procedural learning is hard to describe. For example, if someone were to ask me how to build rapport with somebody, that's a lot harder to describe and demonstrate than, say, showing you the letter J is the 10th letter in the alphabet. I can simply point to an alphabet and count it out. Yep, number 10 is the letter J. Another good example is try developing a PowerPoint course on how to ride a bike. Now, what differentiates declarative from procedural in this case is to actually get on the bike and start pedaling as part of the learning process. Or in the case of how do I build rapport with somebody, you actually need to have a discussion with somebody to learn that. Again, things you do with people. But here's what's interesting and what has moved me to give you this presentation today. Most soft skill courses today are taught using the declarative method. Think about your content for soft skills and ask yourself, for example, do your communication courses tell you all about maintaining eye contact, to stand up straight, speak succinctly and with authority? I'm sure they do. And they're probably well documented on a big PowerPoint slide in your communications course presentation. And even if taught in the classroom, as I've viewed most of the courses out there on soft skill subjects, most of the courses I see online or taught in the classroom are really dense with declarative teaching techniques. You might ask, well, why is that? It's because it's a lot easier than building learning that utilizes procedural learning techniques like one-on-one practice sessions with remedial person-to-person training, that actual practical one-on-one association. It's easier to pass along cognitive information than incorporating experiential, which is really procedural learning. The ability to actually try things out. Like the ability to get on a bicycle and quickly learn about the physics of balance. Again, using the communications course as an example, and by the way, even when taught in a classroom setting, you're passing along cognitive information. You've got that slide up in front of you. It says, look people in the eyes when speaking to them. Avoid using crutch words. Maintain a friendly but authoritative posture, etc. This is a soft skill. And as most often as I've seen it taught right off a PowerPoint. Usually that's it. Now, I've told you the important knowledge nuggets to be an effective communicator. Hey, you're ready. Now go off and be a good communicator. Well, I would argue that's not the end of the story. And the problem is these courses are usually limited to a declarative learning approach. But I think we'd all agree that to be an effective communicator, or to truly be able to ride a bicycle, we should also incorporate procedural learning techniques because we need to try these techniques. We need to actually talk one-on-one with somebody to really learn, to help them learn how to effectively communicate. We actually have to get up on the bicycle and pedal and remain up on the bike without falling before we're really effective at it. Another challenge is asking ourselves, do we have to teach declarative learning before using procedural learning techniques? Or can I go right to the procedural learning techniques? Now, to answer that, let's talk about the very presentation I'm giving, that I'm making to you right now. I'm trying to teach you about procedural learning, but in a very declarative learning restricted way. I don't know how many people are listening to this right now. It could be 10, 25, 50 of you listening to me right now, but I can't see your faces. I can't directly interact with you face to face. I can't really see if I'm effectively teaching you the differences between the two learning techniques. And if I were trying to teach you how to conduct, that course on, let's say it's a course on difficult conversations with your subordinates, if I were trying to teach you that course via this online medium only, arguably I'm not going to really be effective at it because this is a one-way lecture, me to you. I'm not seeing you. I'm providing you nuggets of knowledge, but I can't look you in the eye and ask if you get it or not. I can't have one-on-one practice with you. I think this apart just a little bit more. If I'm trying to teach you hard skills on the declarative side, I'm going to use declarative learning. I'll use as my baseline content things like PowerPoint presentations, PDFs, illustrations, graphs, knowledge transfer stuff, the content. Part of declarative learning, we use quizzes, and these are great to assess whether you're getting the knowledge transfer or not. It's a terrific declarative learning technique. Knowledge reviews and essays are also examples, the ability to reflect on what you saw and heard, be able to draw conclusions. Even interviews and group discussions, which you might off the top of your head think, well, wait a minute, that's procedural. It's actually not. It's a useful tool within the declarative learning toolbox because they're excellent examples of how to reinforce content and draw different perspectives. But again, it's really about cognitive knowledge transfer. Now, mind you, I'm not saying that one teaching approach is better or worse than the other. What I am suggesting is there's an appropriateness of whether to leverage these approaches and how to leverage the approaches to achieve the goals of whatever you're teaching for, the learning on the subject. Basically, declarative is perfect for hard skills. But when it comes to soft skills learning, I'm going to want to use things like on-the-job training. And when I say on-the-job training, I'm not talking about letting somebody just loose on the job to fail or fall down and skin their knees on their own. No, it should be monitored. Doing things like using an observation checklist is a great fit here. Simulations, role play, AR, VR can be terrific tools to really teach soft skills. For example, if you're teaching somebody on how to have difficult conversations, you'll want to utilize some of these procedural techniques. Otherwise, you tried it in the real world, you'd stand the chance of getting punched in the nose. But if you had a simulation you could go one-on-one either with a human through role play or electronic digitally through a simulation, it provides a better opportunity to learn and refine. That's frankly one of the reasons why we at Cornerstone are investing in technologies like Tailspin, where it really brings to life and enables procedural learning for things like that, having a difficult conversation. Another example where I leverage procedural learning is I work with sales reps all the time. And a great way to do that, where I can help them learn, is I'll ask the rep to pretend that I'm the customer. And by that, I'm role-playing. Now, they've already been through a whole multitude of declarative learning experience, but now I'm adding procedural learning to the mix so that they can be more effective. And that was the intended learning outcome in the first place. So it's really blending those two approaches to get the desired outcome. Contextual experiences and cross-training are characteristics of procedural learning, and that I can draw upon previous experiences as part of the learning process. For example, leadership training. Typical corporate leadership training, for the most part, is taught in a declarative learning style, which I would argue it's not complete. You need to have some procedural techniques involved. But I may be in a class to learn management techniques because I just got promoted to manager. And as I'm listening to the proctor reading off a PowerPoint screen, the best learning happens when I can relate these concepts to real-world scenarios that I've experienced in the past. I've been through these leadership courses, and frankly, I draw contextually about times when I was in school, and all those many times that I was either a leader or a follower, be it in the classroom or on a sports team. So I guess my argument here is take inventory of what you have in your learning library and make the distinction: are you getting everything you want out of it, and do you fall short of including procedural learning as a technique to really achieve the goals? In summary, the need for soft skills hasn't changed. You can't Google soft skills without tripping over millions of articles that tell you soft skills are the most important skills you need to learn right now. Yet most of the soft skills learning out there, again, is presented in a declarative approach technique. And now that you know, and if I've been effective in this presentation, is that there are two types of learning, declarative and procedural. Both can be used in the same course, absolutely. Is one better than the other? No. But I encourage you to look at your content library and ask yourself, am I leveraging both to get the outcomes that I want? I think you'll agree, if we are truly to address soft skills learning, you might need to utilize both of these techniques. In closing, I'll be interested to see if in the industry we do more of these virtual conferences, again, where I would normally be on stage talking to you. Today I'm doing it virtually. And even if we'll be doing more once we get beyond the COVID-19 threat, perhaps it'll become the new normal. Perhaps we find it doesn't quite get us to the immersive nature of meeting as a large group interacting with one another. I want to thank you for watching this pre-recorded session. I'll be watching this with you during the conference, which I think is, my time is April 20th. I'll be watching this with you. And we'll be on the conference bridge with you to answer any questions you may have for me. Until then, please be safe and please stay healthy.